Next, we have the Houston Rockets. Now, coming into the season, we pretty much expected Houston to be in the position that they ended the season on. So I have 4 headlines for the Rockets this season. Jalen Green's late season surge, John Wall ending the season as a Rocket, Christian Wood's sustained star display, and KPJ establishing himself as a point guard. Starting with Jalen Green, he and a lot of rookies had a shaky start to the season, but at least Jalen Green was able to end the season on a high note. He showed some up and down play in the middle of it, but like I said, at the end of the season, he really went on a tear. In March, he averaged 21 points per game, 4 assists on 52% from the field and 38% from 3. He really showed why his ceiling was so high and why he, in my opinion, was the best scorer to come out of the 2021 draft. The combination of crazy athleticism, I'm talking about speed, acceleration with the ball and vertical, a dynamic handle, all that allows him to draw fouls and get a step on his defender more often than not when driving. He's a natural shot creator, really confident in creating shots off the dribble from mid-range and from 3. He won't be the Rookie of the Year due to his shaky start early on, but him finding his stride towards the end of the season is a great sign for him and the Rockets. Briefly, we'll talk about John Wall. The Rockets weren't able to find a suitor for him before the deadline. He didn't get bought out towards the end of the season. Maybe something will happen in the offseason because he's going to have a player option for 40-something million that he will definitely accept. So him being on a 1-year contract will be more appealing of a trade pickup for contenders than 2 years of 40-something million. So moving to Christian Wood. He was very consistent from his showing last year. There was only a slight points per game drop off, and that was expected with Jalen Green, a shot creator, a gung-ho, confident shot creator coming onto the scene. He's still one of the best offensive power forwards in the league. Number 1 because of his shooting ability, and number 2 what he's able to do off of that. When he operates in the pick and pop, he has a good enough handle to attack hard closeouts. He's really threatening as a spot-up shooter, and he's rounded out his offensive game as a whole, becoming a better post-up player and operating out of the face-up in the high post. So yeah, Christian Wood's numbers did drop off a little bit, but he still played at the same high level he played at last season. Lastly, talking about KPJ, Kevin Porter Jr., I had a lot of questions as if he and Jalen Green could play in the same backcourt. Like, I didn't really know if KPJ could actually be a point guard next to such a player with, on-ball scoring capabilities and superstar potential like Jalen Green. To be honest, I didn't really know how good of a playmaker he was in the 2020 to 2021 season. He was still a solid playmaker this season. His assist-to-turnover ratio was solid in the high 1s. And it seemed like he was able to better figure out how to play with Jalen Green when he came back from his injury. He's still a high-level 3-point shot creator, but he needs to continue to work on his 2-point efficiency. I really think he and Jalen will be a very scary backcourt as they continue to grow and develop with one another. I also have to focus on KPJ's defensive improvements this season. He turned into one of the Rockets' top perimeter defenders. Not only was he really disruptive in passing lanes and on ball, but he was just playing really solid head-up defense one-on-one, keeping his opponent in front of him more often than not. He was making second efforts and second rotations. I think he was just really committing a lot of time and effort to his defense this year compared to last. The Houston Rockets have 1 star, and that is Christian Wood. And they have 4 main prospects, 2 in which I talked about already in Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr., but 2 others that I have to spend some time on in Kenyon Martin Jr. and Alperen Sengun. I talked about Christian Wood's role on this team already, but I gotta talk about his fit a little bit. He's 26 years old, so he's gonna have a high value for teams looking to contend because of his skill set, because he is a floor spacing big. I don't really know how well he fits on a rebuilding team, and I don't know if he's on the Rockets timeline really. Talking about KJ Martin, he had a good year this season. KJ Martin's really an athletic, strong 6'7", 6'8" power forward. He was able to get a lot of his points in the flow of the offense, being a good screener and roller, cutting off ball, getting some putback points, just using his athleticism and inside scoring feel as much as possible. He's also a really versatile defender. He's got really good size to be a versatile, positionless defender in this league. His weaknesses are going to be his on-ball ability. He's not really a shot creator. He doesn't really have that in his game. And he doesn't really possess the ability to consistently drive on ball just out of an ISO and his three ball is solid. He shot around 36% from three this year, but it isn't really consistent. Like, he'll either go a game of shooting 3 for 4 from three, or he'll go the next game going 0 for 4. You know, like, I just hope he can establish some consistency from the 3-point line. What's going to determine his ceiling is going to be his on-ball development. If he can just add a little bit of skill and confidence in scoring on ball, and really just buying into becoming an all-around positionless defender, if he can just continue off of his defensive developments this season. Talking about Alperen Şengün, he was heralded as someone to have like shades of Jokic game, just because he was a European center that likes to pass. That's why people in the draft were they weren't comparing him strictly to Jokic, but they were saying he had shades of Jokic in his game. So obviously his strengths on the offensive end were his playmaking feel. He made a lot of like really tight window, behind the back, over the head passes that are like, damn, you can see the Jokic comparisons. And then defensively, he was really disruptive in like dig downs and heads up deflections of lob passes as well. Şengün averaged 0.8 steals and 0.9 blocks per game in 20 minutes of action. Converted to per 100 numbers, he was getting 1.9 steals and 2.2 blocks. So he's a really disruptive defender. I think he was just really able to use his IQ on the defensive end to be a defensive playmaker, similar to kind of how Jokic plays defense. His weaknesses are his athleticism. He's just really slow. He's not a high-level jumper, and he's not as strong, really, so that doesn't really make up for his lack of speed and burst. His post game, he tried to post up a lot. Not a lot, but a good amount. But he just wasn't really efficient in getting his own offense from the post. And his shooting just wasn't really there. He can't really control his athleticism. He's just going to have to deal with that. But he is going to have to improve his outside shooting and become more efficient of a post-up player to really up his ceiling and fulfill his potential. There's 4 other players, role players, that I want to talk about on this team, starting with Dennis. He didn't really score the ball well in his time in Houston, especially early on. He was having horrible percentages from the field and from three, but he was able to get better as time progressed, getting his point total to 11 per game on 39% from the field and 33% from three. But what really helped him and the Rockets' offense was his playmaking prowess. He was able to make things a lot easier, especially for Jalen Green, especially in the time that was spent by the Rockets without KPJ, their starting point guard. Jae'Sean Tate deserves some credit this season. He's a versatile defender. I mean, this dude is 6'4", but he's able to play the power forward consistently because he's strong and really athletic. So he's able to play the 4, but he can pretty much guard 2 through 4, so he can guard 3 positions. He loves to get to the rim and attack the basket. He's a really aggressive driver and finisher. And he's not the most efficient three-point shooter, but he's not afraid to take a shot from out there. I was hoping for more of an improvement from outside than just a 0.04% increase, but at the end of the day, it's only his second season, even though he is 26 years old. Now, Eric Gordon regained his shooting stroke this season after kind of a down year the season before. He's still on a really bad contract, though. It won't really hurt the Rockets because it's not like they're free agency suitors. I just don't think they'll be able to trade his contract to a contender for like a second-round pick because it is really bad. He'll probably get bought out soon, if not this upcoming season or off-season, probably the next, but I don't think he's getting traded because that contract's really bad. Lastly, I'll talk about Garrison Matthews. He and Eric Gordon were the main snipers for this team. Like, these are the type of guys you need in order to keep a respectable offense and make life easier for your on-ball shot creators. Finally, looking to the offseason, the Rockets should have a pick between 1 and 6. I have 2 prospects that I think are going to be very good for them if they get like a top 3 pick. And then I have one that will be like a backup if those 2 guys are gone and they get like a pick that's either 5 or 6. So the best player for them I think to get would be Jabari Smith. He's an elite defensive talent, a great athlete. He's got good shot creation feel from the mid-range off the dribble, and he's a great 3-point shooter in the catch and shoot setting and really creating his own 3. The biggest draw of Jabari Smith is his defensive talent. Houston can use any defensive help they can salvage, so adding Jabari Smith, who is arguably the best defender in this draft, I think would be a no-brainer if they got the number 1 pick or if they got the 2 or 3 pick and Jabari was still available. So I don't know if Jabari Smith is going to be an NBA 4 or an NBA 3. That's yet to really be seen. I think he's most comfortable playing the small forward position because he is a really good perimeter defender and he's a pretty good, and he's more so of a perimeter offensive player than somebody who's going to bang down low, so that more suits him playing the 3, though he can turn into a slim dude playing the 4 position, kind of like KD's been doing the past couple years. But I think out the gates he'll be a small forward. So the Rockets could have 3 like guys with really good shot creation potential on the perimeter in KPJ, Jalen Green, and Jabari Smith. The next best pick for them I think is Chet Holmgren. He's a lengthy defensive big, could play the 4 if he has NBA level lateral quickness and can keep up his prolific outside shooting, and he could play the center if he adds some strength. A 4-5 tandem of Chet and Christian Wood, I would have questions about that because like which of them are going to guard a 250-pound low post center? Like at least 250, you know. I feel like they could get abused on the boards from an inability and lack of weight to really like box out consistently, though. I mean, Chet did a decent job of going against like bruising centers, and Christian Wood has gotten more used to it. Those are just some immediate concerns, though. I do think Chet is a really good pick for them because of his defensive prowess as well. High level shot blocker in Gonzaga, wasn't abused by pick and roll switches, was really a smart defender and had just good positioning and anticipation. So yeah, that's like the main draw of the Rockets taking Chet. I don't know if them taking Chet guarantees that Christian Wood gets traded, but I think if Chet's available and Jabari Smith is already off the board, I think Chet is the guy for the Rockets to go for. Lastly, I'll talk about AJ Griffin. He's like a backup pick really if the Rockets were to fall to like 6. I think that's the lowest they can fall to, 6, maybe 7. But if that were to be the case, I think AJ Griffin is a good target. He's the best like high-end plug and play in guy in this draft. He's arguably the best shooter. He's got great size to play the 3 consistently. He could also play the 2, but his fit on the Rockets would definitely be best at the small forward position. His athleticism was ridiculous in high school, which allowed him to finish inside at a high level. But this was before injuries, so his athleticism really wasn't the same in his 1 year at Duke. He displayed flashes of it in college, but there's still some ground to make up, and we still gotta wait for him to consistently display that athleticism. And he's a great on-ball defender. He's still working on consistency, but he's a high-level on-ball defender. I think he has high potential on the defensive side of the ball. So AJ, in my opinion, is one of the best 3-and-D guys, especially on the wing. So if the Rockets were to fall somewhat in the draft, AJ would be a good target. Moving into free agency, their main upcoming free agent is Dennis Schroeder, and that's really it. He might be outside the Rockets' price range. I think he'll command like 8 to 11 million. Actually, no. I think he'll definitely get at least 10 million per year because Dennis Schroeder is still a respected backup point guard in this league. So I'll say his range is 10 to 15 million. And I don't think the Rockets are going to be able to go over their cap due to not having his bird rights. So looking at free agency as a whole, the Rockets are only going to have 6 million in cap space. So they don't really have that much money to play with. Player needs for them a veteran backup point guard to run the second unit and make offense easier, a sharp shooting forward to provide spacing for Jalen and KPJ drives, and an actual center, like security for them if they add a power forward in the draft and lose Christian Wood, or draft Chet but don't think he can play the center. An actual big body bruising center for them, just to provide some security for them going forward. So potential targets I have, one being DeLon Wright at around 5 to 7 million. He's a combo guard, but he's always been a reliable guard at getting to the rim and setting up opportunities for teammates off the bench. Another good target for them is Bryn Forbes. He can make 5 to 10 million, I don't know, just depending on the market. He's a marksman that's really been showcasing his abilities these past 2 seasons. Might be somewhat outside of what Houston can afford, but he's only making 4.5 million this season. So another guy is Ben McLemore. Ben's trying to turn himself into a perimeter sniper to salvage his value in the NBA, but he's been streaky year to year. He's definitely somebody you can get on a minimum deal. Another guy is Bismack Biyombo. He's another minimum option, a budget center option. He's always been a solid one that can give you around 15 minutes of high-level effort and solid rebounding and paint protection. Lastly, I have Derek Favors from 3 to 6 million. A bit more money to spend, but a bit more value because he has more of a reliable low-post game than that of Bismack. Looking at the trade market, this offseason, potentially on the block, could be John Wall. He's still a very talented veteran point guard. If the Rockets could somehow take a bad contract and a couple of second rounders, I think they'd take that in a heartbeat. And maybe Christian Wood. I just don't know if the Rockets, I don't know their stance on Christian Wood's future in Houston. So what would they be targeting? Possibly just future draft capital or first or second year prospects. So my predictions for Houston this offseason, I think they let Dennis walk. Dennis is still one of the best backup point guards in the league. So it would be great for them to keep him, but I think his asking price will be outside of Houston's range. I predict Houston to land the number 2 pick and draft Chet Holmgren. The Rockets actually ended the year with the worst record in the league. I thought Orlando had a worse record, but the Rockets ended the year with the worst record. So I'm just going to predict that they get the 2nd overall pick for the 2nd year in a row, and they're going to try to add somebody who has the highest potential and upside. I feel like Jabari Smith is going to go number 1. So I feel like this would be the perfect opportunity for them to take Chet Holmgren. The fit also works out as Houston needs more high-end talent in the front court, with their backcourt hopefully set for the future. Also, Chet isn't very ball dominant. He can fit seamlessly into an offense, spacing the floor, rolling, popping, filling the dunker spot. This will all allow him to play easily off the likes of KPJ and Jalen Green. He's one of the best defenders in the class. If his prowess translates to the NBA, that'd be great as Houston's defense is one of the worst. So my last prediction is that Christian Wood is traded this offseason. I think the likelihood of this increases tremendously if the Rockets draft Chet Holmgren or even Paolo Banchero, who's a power forward, or maybe even if they draft Jabari Smith and view him as a power forward. Even if they don't land one of those guys, I think he'll be traded since he has a skill set very appealing to a lot of contending teams. He's in the midst of his prime, and after this season will be on the last year of his very team-friendly contract. I doubt the Rockets are looking to give him a big-time extension, so they may look to add as much draft capital as they can for such an intriguing player that is Christian Wood. Despite a dreadful season, I think there are still a few good things for the Rockets to take away. Jalen Green had a rough rookie start, but towards the end of the season, he gave us reasons to buy into his superstar potential. KPJ still has some areas in his game to address, but he silenced a lot of the doubt regarding whether he could be an NBA-level starting point guard. These two guys have a lot of potential to form a very dangerous, dynamic backcourt for years to come. Christian Wood sustained consistency from last season as a very gifted offensive power forward who's in the middle of his prime. Houston has an intriguing conglomerate of young prospects that still have potential and time to prove that they can be significant contributors to an NBA roster. This offseason, GM Rafael Stone has serious decisions to make regarding the futures of John Wall and Christian Wood. The decision of more importance revolves around Wood, as he's a player in the midst of his prime and on a very tradable contract, quite the antithesis of Wall's situation. So Christian is someone who could bring in quite a haul on the trade market if Stone doesn't view him in the team's long-term plans. As for the draft, Houston's virtually guaranteed a top 5 pick, so they have an opportunity to add someone with very high talent and potential. I think their top 3 options are Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith, and AJ Griffin as a backup. The Rockets' guide to escaping rock bottom of the NBA hinges on Steve Silas and the coaching staff developing this young team mentally and on the defensive end. Rafael Stone adding high-impact veterans, and Jalen Green being able to hit sky-high superstar potential that many think he possesses.